have left Vladimir Putin furious. In a meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah just after the shootdown, Putin seemingly tries to exude the subtle body language his KGB training might have ingrained.
Turkey and its companies have pulled off a massive feat, slashing a jaw-dropping $2 billion off their energy bills in 2023.
Well, Turkey has become a powerhouse in the realm of energy, saving $2 billion by ramping up imports of discounted Russian oil. Despite Western sanctions, Ankara remained unfazed, even expressing interest in further collaboration with its eastern neighbor.
What's the grand plan here? How does this all connect to Turkey's master plan of becoming an energy distribution hub for southern Europe? Next Generation Economics brings you the latest economic, financial, and global news from different parts of the world. If you enjoy learning about different topics around the world, then we are sure you are going to find this video interesting. In this video, we discuss the strategic moves, unexpected alliances, and groundbreaking deals that have the potential to reshape the global economic landscape. Watch this video to the end and find out how these moves will have massive consequences on the world stage. Let's get started. Turkey decided to up its game by tapping into discounted Russian oil and refined products. Despite facing Western sanctions, Ankara, the capital of Turkey, is boldly eyeing even more imports from its neighbor to the north. Now, that's an interesting twist, isn't it? Now, let me take you back a bit. The government in Ankara has a grand vision to position Turkey right at the center of a complex network connecting resources from its eastern neighbors to markets in Europe. This dream has been Turkey's aspiration for nearly 2 decades, but it hasn't been a walk in the park. The challenge: setting up a hub, and not just any hub, one modeled after the Western European style that thrives on free trade and private initiative. And to cut those energy bills, Turkey decided to go for gold by importing discounted Russian oil and refined products, defying Western sanctions. It's a bold move, no doubt, but it aligns with Turkey's ambitious plan to become a key player in the complex game between resource-rich neighbors and the bustling markets of Europe. Turkey is reaching out to Russia for a sweet deal on oil and fancy refined products. And get this, they're doing it despite the Western sanctions. It's a bold move, no doubt, but it fits perfectly with Turkey's big plan. Back in the past, there were some bumps in the road with the Nord Stream pipeline, and guess what? Russia and Turkey ended up seeing eye to eye, especially when it comes to gas. This is where the Turk Stream and Blue Stream pipelines come in, stretching across the Black Sea. These pipelines are like the superhighways for Russian gas flowing into Europe. Essential, you could say. Just about a year ago, in October 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin floated this idea of a gas hub in Turkey. The plan: amp up the demand for Russian gas and make it a breeze for the European Union to get their hands on it. Now, here's a piece of info. Turkey has been quite dependent on Russian gas, clocking in at 45% in 2021 and 40% in 2022. Oh, and fun fact alert. Back in 2020, Turkey proudly ranked as the 7th largest gas consumer on the planet. Now let's zoom in on the numbers. Data from the London Stock Exchange Group spills the beans that in November 2023, shipments of Russian Ural crude oil to Turkey soared to an all-time high. We're talking a whopping 400,000 barrels per day. That's a hefty 14% of Russia's entire seaborne oil exports for that month. For the time being, the Russian energy minister and Turkey's energy ministry, as well as Tüpraş and Star Refinery, have remained quiet. There have been no official remarks yet, but the plot thickens. Turkey's appetite for Russian petroleum products seems limitless. It's not just about more crude supplies. We're talking a surge of 200% in Turkey's imports of Russian diesel, heating oil, jet, and marine fuel from January to November 2023. Wrap your head around this. That's around 290,000 barrels per day. Huge, right? Let's break it down further. Russia showered Turkey with a whopping 13 million tons of distillates during this period, including a hefty 8.6 million tons of ultra-low sulfur diesel. And believe it or not, it's a significant leap from the same stretch in 2022, according to data from the London Stock Exchange Group and Trader Reports. These numbers are sky high, especially for such a short time frame. Now let's talk about Turkey. When it comes to prices, Turkey's been cutting some sweet deals, paying $25 to $150 less for a ton of Russian diesel compared to Mediterranean prices. And those crude discounts? Ranging between $5 and $20 per barrel. Hold on to your wallets because these savings are no joke. But why does it matter? Well, these cost savings are doing wonders for Turkey. They're narrowing down their trade deficit and taking the heat off their currency, which faced a 30% devaluation. So it looks like Turkey's not just getting fuel, they're getting some serious financial relief. This year, Turkey's diesel exports have skyrocketed by a whopping 120%, hitting 6.03 million tons from January to November 2023. Now, that's a fuel-filled journey according to data from the London Stock Exchange Group. But not everyone is clinking glasses to Turkey's newfound gas glory. There's some grumbling in the ranks. Activists and supporters of Ukraine are pointing fingers, claiming that Turkey is indirectly giving Russia a helping hand in dodging sanctions. Turkey, though, has been quick to brush off these accusations, standing firm and denying any involvement in enjoying those sweet deals on Russian energy exports. They argue that what they're exporting is refined from various crude types, and it's not all rainbows and bargains just for Turkey. Worth noting on the global stage is India, who's been cozying up to Russian oil too. In the first 9 months of 2023, India managed to stash away an amazing $2.7 billion in savings. But here's the catch. India imported much larger volumes than Turkey, resulting in Turkey scoring higher per barrel savings. Traders spill the beans on this, attributing the savings to cheap freight charges. And believe it or not, it presently costs around $6 million to ship a tanker of Russian oil to Turkey, while it's a heftier $9 million to make the same journey to India. Analysts are buzzing with news that Turkey's refineries, especially the big player Tüpraş, have pulled off a transformation, making them some of the most profitable plants in the Mediterranean. This change of fortune kicked in since the Russian sanctions hit the scene back in February 2022. Tüpraş, Turkey's heavyweight oil refiner, just dropped some impressive numbers, a gross profit margin of $30 per barrel over the past year. Now, to put it in perspective, that's $6 per barrel higher than the average margin for a complex refinery in the Mediterranean. But hold on, because Moscow and Ankara are gearing up for a game-changing agreement, a natural gas hub in Turkey. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak spilled the beans over the weekend, sharing that Russia's Gazprom and Turkey's Bodas have been tag-teaming on this. Now, rewind to last year. Russia had this grand plan for a gas hub in Turkey to compensate for lost sales to Europe. But, as you can imagine, the journey hasn't been a walk in the park. The initial talks hit a speed bump when Turkey faced some intense earthquakes in February. Then, the spotlight shifted to elections in May. And to add a dash of drama, there were hitches in the plan. Disagreements sparked over who should take the lead in running the hub, causing a bit of a delay. Looking ahead, Moscow and Ankara are deep in discussions about establishing a hub for Russian gas in Turkey. This strategic move perfectly aligns with Ankara's long-standing goal of becoming a powerhouse in energy distribution for Southern Europe. The timing couldn't be more crucial, especially after the EU decided to significantly cut down its purchases of Russian gas. Word on the street is that gas supplies to Turkey are set to soar even higher in the coming months. Why? A heavyweight in the private Russian oil sector, Lukoil, just inked a deal with Azerbaijan's Sokar. The deal involves refining up to a whopping 200,000 barrels per day of Lukoil's oil at the Turkish Star refinery. Translation: more fuel for the energy fire. One thing is crystal clear, both Moscow and Ankara are eager to see this gas hub become a reality as soon as possible. And why wouldn't they be? It's not just about new markets for Russian gas, it's about repositioning Ankara on the global energy stage. So, Russia's been throwing in some sweet discounts for its oil and oil products, Turkey's been eagerly snapping them up, saving a good chunk of change in the process. Looking ahead, Turkey is expected to rake in even more cash when this gas hub with Russia goes live.